based on the amount of interest that we have seen lately in Silicon Valley, in US, about things pertaining to India. And the high point of that really was the visit of Prime Minister of India to Silicon Valley in September. And I think that's when it crystallized that we should put together a much more ambitious agenda for discussion at TiEcon. And, FICCI has been our partner for a while, so it was natural that we engage with them in terms of developing an agenda and planning this track. So, so I want to, so it was in the fitness of things that that the leader of FICCI, opened this track, and it's really my privilege and honor to introduce the Secretary General, Mr. Didar Singh. He has a distinguished career in Indian Administrative Service, and since 2012, he has been Secretary General of FICCI. For those who don't know FICCI, this is one of the leading industry bodies that plans and facilitates and plots the next move for this 1.2 trillion economy. It's a leading industry association. So with that, please help me welcome Mr. Didar Singh, Secretary General, FICCI.
It seems that we are still in the process of getting together, so it's mostly talking to ourselves, so that's a nice thing. I'll begin with, this is the track which was going to be especially dedicated to sort of India stuff. And what we were looking at was this whole question, and we gave it this term of the Golden Gate for global investors. Now, I want to remind you of 1986, when a young lad studying in Stanford actually wrote a book called The Golden Gate. It is, if some of you might remember, it's a novel in verse. In fact, it is the world's longest novel written in verse. It comprises of 590 stanzas. It was Vikram Seth was the name of this youngster. He was at that time doing a PhD at Stanford. And from there comes this whole evocative idea of, and I'll just quote from that. And this is the way the verse sort of begins. One evening as he walked across Golden Gate Park, the ill-judged toss of a red frisbee almost brained him. And he goes on to say, he turned his thoughts to electronic circuitry, this soothed his mind. He left irregular, moronic sentimentality behind. He thought of OR gates and of OFF gates, and of ROMs and of NOR gates and of NAND gates, of nanoseconds and megabytes. That was Vikram Seth writing in 1986. In many ways, what does the Golden Gate Bridge actually signify? It's an engineering marvel. But it's an engineering marvel that's also about heritage. It's about connectivity. It's also about people jumping off the bridge. It's, in many ways, it resembles an emerging economy. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how India brings to you this connectivity. It brings you the bridge. It brings you a new idea, and it brings you heritage. All of it together. I mean, you may fall off sometimes, but still it's a great possibility that you may not. So I'm going to begin with, I call this the Dilbert moment. And I took this up because the gentleman there is called Ashok, and quite obviously that has to be a person of Indian origin. So he's talking about change, and he says the subtle implication is that I should change to be more like you. So what are you asking us to do is what the question here is. That are you only asking us to ape you? We'd rather choose death. So that's the Indian story. We're going to do our own story, and we've been doing it, and that's what we're going to do. So the question that arises, and this is something that many of you are already aware of, why India? And this is something that Venk and I were talking about when he was in India last. And this is probably some of the 5 key reasons why we believe that it should be India or it is India. First of all, developing economies, but developed economies, but more so the China story is ending. That's one very, very big point. Second point is the Modi government. The Modi government brings you a lot of hope, gives you potential, and it brings you a growth story. You all know that we are the single largest growing large economy. The third reason is that though it's a difficult place, and it is a difficult place, anybody doing business in India knows that, it is a difficult place, but it's difficult for everybody. So whenever MNCs come to me in FICCI and say that, oh, I had this problem, I had that problem, I say, let's just hang on. Every one of my members has exactly the same problem. So just relax, it's fair, it's open, it's transparent, and everybody goes through hell. And we basically say it's the most difficult place to do business, but probably the most profitable. So take your choice. The fourth reason is that, and this is the one that we're talking about here today, Industry 4.0. As the whole world begins to change, you're going to need new models. And India is finding its own new model. And what is that new model? It's basically sustainable innovation. And I'm purposely not using the word of frugal innovation. I'm saying sustainable innovation. And what sustainable innovation basically implies is that A, it has to be climate friendly, and secondly, it has to be commercially sustainable, ecologically sustainable, politically sustainable, socially sustainable, and economically sustainable. How do we come up with ideas that work in that whole sphere? And the last reason why I think India is a great idea is all of you, is basically Silicon Valley. What the Indian diaspora brings to the table with this connectivity and the bridge from around the whole world, this is a major, major plus point for connecting and working with India. Now, I'm not going to get into details of it. We're already running late. But if you look at any aspect of the big figures that come out today, India is the world's most attractive investment destination. It's number one in the 100 countries of growth, of Frost & Sullivan, of IMF, of Ernst & Young, of whatever. We don't have to get into, as I said, the details. But all of it is working towards showing how if you innovate in India and you make in India, absorb the disruption as part of the work that you do, because a lot of it is already happening in India, you will be able to move forward towards this sustainable innovation that I'm talking about. Now, I'm just going to give you a couple of very, very small examples of what's actually happened. This is called Chotu Cool. It's a very cool word and a very cool name. Basically, it provided these refrigerators which Godrej made to bring the price down to 1/4 of what it normally is, and was able to sell this across villages all over the place. A very, very simple technology. Another one, which is more to do with business and trade. You know, as the telecom revolution was there all over the world, and including India, and Nokia was the big company, suddenly comes Micromax and Carbon Mobiles, which all they're doing is they're assembling stuff which they bring in from China and sell it at 1/10 the price. And suddenly, they've captured the whole market, and Nokia's gone. So this is what makes India a number one choice for investment. And we are looking at it in terms of its demography, its policies, its entrepreneurship. Again, not getting into details, but basically telling you that there are lots of opportunities which you can connect with, and we would love to welcome and help you with that. What are the key sectors? And this is the last part of what I'm going to talk about, because we have a panel now that's going to come on and actually discuss it. What are the key sectors that we as FICCI, as an industry body, would like to bet on? These are some of the key sectors that I'd like to mention. The first is agriculture and food processing. It is the one big sector waiting to happen. We have a massive agricultural base. We have massive opportunity to food retail, but it's not there. It's not in an organized context, the way you have it in the US or Europe or whatever. So though there's little bits of it, it's very small. And this is the one big area which is actually a lot of innovation happening there. And I've given some examples there. For water, we had a company called Agri-Sri, which did something. We had a novel way for reducing turmeric processing, something called HealthyTech. There's another one called Farms and Farmers that provided a mobile platform for news and information to farmers. You've heard these stories, but there are loads of them in India. So sustainability, disruptive innovation, all of it is available in the agri space and in the food processing space. The next big sector is obviously clean tech. India has one of the world's largest renewable energy programs. We're going to add 100 gigawatts. It's a very massive move for the country to move from today a very coal-based kind of power sector into a renewables power sector. And in this, there's lots of stuff happening at frugal and disruptive innovation. You know, there is Greenway Grameen, which has taken out a cooking stove that generates power and lights a bulb while it's cooking. You have another one called Mera Gaon, Mera Power, which has fuel cells alternatives with lead-acid batteries and solar plant to supply power to off-grid areas. Lots of these things all over the place in little pockets, but now developing. So a chance to come and be part of that story. Another big area, which is, of course, well known to TiEcon, and I shouldn't be talking too much about it, it's the whole digital world. But the digital world now becoming part of the development world, that's the real story. The story is not about software and BPOs. The story is about the digital world actually impacting health, education, agriculture, financial services across the board. That's the real story, and that's where there's lots to happen. And then, of course, the most major of all sectors, defense. Defense is something which, again, you know that India has this, we are known as the world's largest importer of defense machinery. I think it's a disgrace to be called that. We need to be producing in our own defense machinery and equipment. So that's another big sector waiting to happen, and lots of American companies particularly are looking at India, are looking at collaborations, are looking at co-production, and it's something that we in FICCI particularly, we have a whole vertical on defense, and we are pushing this whole idea of how US companies and Indian companies can actually do lots of stuff together. And there is, for example, just the defense offset obligation that you must be aware of. 250 billion, I mean, it's a lot of money available there to do new stuff and get into this whole area. So that's it. I was just going to flag some of these key items. Okay, so that's it. Thank you. And we'll move on to the panel now. Yeah, great. Thanks.